So welcome, this is just a little tester really for my ongoing recording issues with OBS. But today I thought we'd have a look at the latest release from Feinmold's Phantom family. And it's the German F-4F in JG71 Richthofen markings. This is the second release of the slatted wing long-nose Phantoms, which have just been released. Sort of like the original was from about 2019, 2020, so in 2025, and we finally got round to the slatted wing Phantoms. They've released an F4E and an F4F so far. So this came directly from Japan. I ordered it actually only about a week and a half ago when it turned up. So the kit is FX06. You get two options, both one's an anniversary scheme, and both carry sort of a variation on the norm 81 camouflage, which was kind of like the camouflage the Phantoms wore before they went off to be modified into ice or improved combat efficiency Phantoms. So, fairly compact box. So the usual selection of, let's just move all of this out the way to begin with. Let's get that out of the way. So fairly standard sort of Feinmold instruction sheet. It's not terribly different from any of the other ones if you built any of the other ones. Obviously there's just going to be differences with the slatted wings and F4F specific parts, which really just amount to the tail planes being unslatted, or unslotted I should say, on the F4F. In terms of stores with this kit, you get a full set of tanks, but that's it. You get launch rails for the sidewinders, but all the actual stores that this would carry are available separately in separate weapons sets, a la sort of Azigawa from the 1980s and 1990s. So yeah, in the latter part of the Phantoms or the F4F's life, it was just purely an interceptor and air defence aircraft. But in the earlier iterations, it was used for attack, ground attack as well. So it did carry various bombs and rocket pods and things at various points. So yeah, and then you get two, there's two schemes, like I say, both in the Norm 81 scheme. There's one from 1985, and there's one from July 2013, which is effectively, I think, an anniversary scheme, if I'm correct. Yeah, various all the all the colours are referenced to Mr. Colour. So, and very helpfully, it does tell you here how at what percentage you would need to enlarge these on a photocopier to make them 72nd if you wanted to make masks or something. Quite a small but reasonably complete decal sheet there, including instrument panels and stuff. But these were fairly low visibility aircraft. They just had a few little sort of striped walkways and stuff. But other than that, it's typical Japanese decal quality in that it's exceedingly well printed. The decals may look a little bit thick on the actual sheet, but I generally find that's down to the kind of glue they use. And once you move into actually applying them, they will adhere just fine, and they look just fine, especially with the kind of finishing that I tend to use these days. So the majority of the kit is as we've previously seen. So you've got this one-piece main fuselage part here. Very fine detail. You've got a separate spine insert, obviously to cover the naval variants, which if I'm honest, I find it a little bit irritating, especially on a one-piece like this, when you could literally have a small drop-in panel sort of about here, just to cope with that refueling bay door. It just means that it gives you extra seams that you have to clean up, if you like. Like if this doesn't fit perfectly, it does tend to look pretty rough. But in terms of the actual detail and stuff, it's really very nice. So I'm actually opening this up as we go. So here's the sprue with the pylons, or the pylon, the drop tanks, as you can see, sidewinder launchers, sway, or should I say bracings for the pylons, and and your chaff and flare dispensers for the pylons. This is common to basically most of their toolings. That has managed to. What I'm going to do. That's come loose from the sprue, so I'm just going to tape that onto the sprue there, like so. So it doesn't get lost. This is the standard long nose sprue. You've got the nose cone there, you've got the tail, and this is the rest of the long nose parts. Now I find this quite a curate's egg. Because I find that Fine Moulds have done a few things that I really don't like, and Hasegawa did better 35 years ago. So you've got this tail here with a drop-in part, which is on the other sprue here, and I've discovered over time that the fit on a couple of these isn't all that great, and I think Fine Moulds, to their credit, have also sort of come to the same conclusion, as their short nose Phantoms have a new vertical tail fin, which is one part without this drop-in insert, which is a much better solution. One of the other things I kind of find a little bit annoying is that the lower nose insert is split straight across the middle of the forward sparrow bays. See if I can open one of the other bags here and find the lower wing. So yeah, so I'm just pointing out a few things that I find quite awkward or quite unnecessary, if you like. So yeah, so there's the lower wing there, with the drop-in inserts for the catapult bridles for the carrier-based aircraft. So yeah, as you can see, this drops in here, but is split right across the middle of the sparrow bays. When Hasegawa did this was the dividing line here of the lower nose insert, so that all the forward sparrow bays were intact in one piece, a much better solution. One of the other little irritants is, as you can see, the rear of the wing here, lower wing, is just a flat piece. Hasegawa had actually moulded this piece here, which goes back between the engine bays here they'd actually moulded that onto this wing so that any problems with the join were hidden by the jet pipe itself. So this is, again, if this isn't perfectly aligned, you're going to have a filling and sanding job around the rear, where the between the engines, where the arrestor hook lies, and it makes it unnecessarily awkward when, like I say, you consider that Hasegawa did it, in my opinion, correctly, sort of 35 years ago. Separate air brakes, separate auxiliary doors there, and this is the slatted wing. So you've got the mounting points for the inboard slats there. One of the other things that Fine Moulds have subsequently done is they've also added the gun gas purge intake on top of the nose here. You could that tends to come open when the gun fires, but it'd be easy enough to carve off if you don't want it, and it's there if you do. So it's not hollow at the front, so you might be left sort of trying to hollow that out a little bit for more realism. So the entirety of the forward fuselage comes with a little bit of an intake there, which go onto the main sprue here. There's the outside of the intake, so that all makes a really nice full depth intake. The tail part here, the majority of this being metal. On the in fact, all of this is metal on the finished aircraft, so it's a the fit is, in my experience, pretty good here. So it's any fit issues are more or less can be more or less ignored, because it falls along panel detail where there's a distinct change in colour from camouflage to natural metal on the real thing. And one of the other minor irritants I found is, again, Hasegawa did this different 35 years ago. The intake ramp here, the interior and exterior intake ramp are moulded in one. And all those years ago, Hasegawa did this separately, did the actual intake ramp itself separately, which meant you could paint it separately and slide it into place at the end, which kept the entirety of the forward fuselage free while you were painting it. It was just a much nicer solution. And in fact, since I discovered that, every Phantom I've built, I always, if it isn't Hasegawa with separate intake ramps, I will always cut this off anyway and paint it separately, and it just drops into place with a piece of white glue or whatever afterwards. It's a very nicely detailed kit. You've got a fully detailed interior, very nice seats, and all that kind of stuff. Little supplementary or extra sprue here, which has got the later style pylons and the spine insert with the refueling door on it, and also an F-15 style 600-gallon fuel tank, drop tank for the belly, which most long-nosed Phantoms move to later in their lives. It's had I think it was a higher G rating, and it wasn't the same as the F-15 tank, but it was broadly similar and made by the same people, and it was the same shape, but some of the detail differed in that you couldn't, for instance, take one of these tanks off the centre line of an F4 and hang it under an F-15 wing, because the mountings and stuff were different as far as I'm aware. So that's the E-sprue, that's a little supplementary E-sprue there, with that tank and the spine insert pylons and nose leg and stuff. So this is the major part of the slatted wing sprue. AH it's marked, so you've got the upper wings here and the outer wings. All these slats actually appear. All the slats are actually separate, so you mount them as you build. Air brakes as well, and all the mounting, all the slat actuators. There's not actually any there's not any provision in the kit to do the slats deployed, but it does mean that as you assemble them, they do look like what they are on a real aircraft, which is separate moving surfaces, which I guess is a good thing. Very nicely moulded. Again, I do find that these they do require some work with all these drop-in parts to make sure that they look like they're actually part of the airframe rather than added on. But yeah, there you go. The last of the extra sprues, if you like. So there's a pair of the unslotted tailplanes. Most long-nose Phantoms, the F-4E, the F-4G, and what am I thinking of? F-4EJ, Japanese Phantoms, essentially. They all had the slotted stabilators, and for whatever reason, the Luftwaffe decided to retain the unslotted stabilators, which will have increased landing speed a little bit, but I suppose it doesn't really matter. It was never flying off a carrier anyway. So they're they're basic ones. They haven't got the reinforcing triangle, which some aircraft had later in their life, but I don't think the Luftwaffe ever had them. And then you've got the actual slats themselves, which locate on into the wings, and the wing fences, which are again very nicely produced, and you just have to hope that they fit as nice as they look. The exhausts, so these are the GE10 or GE17. So there was GE8 and GE10, GE15 and 17. So the 8 and the 15 with the short nozzles, and the 10 and the 17 with the long nozzles. So obviously, being a long-nose Phantom, they all had the long nozzles of the later variants, and a small ring that goes onto the fuselage before you mount the exhausts. And then finally, I'm not going to take these out of the bag because I don't want to damage them, but this is the clear sprue. You've got a windscreen there. You've got canopy in separate parts and a one-piece moulding if you want to do the canopy closed, which is quite nice. Very, very clear. Very well done. No distortion or anything visible on them, so they're really nice. So yeah. It's kind of almost a mixed bag, I find, the fine molds Phantoms. That people think they are the be all and end all of modern Phantoms, and I tend to think that they're a bit of a curate's egg. They're clearly the best 72nd scale Phantoms on the market in nearly every single sense. But for me, it's just compromised a little bit by, you know, a few design decisions that I think are questionable. I think it's overly complicated around the nose, where you got the top insert as well as the bottom insert. Again, I get it; it preserves detail, but if you get that even slightly wrong when you're assembling it, you end up just losing a lot of detail anyway when you're cleaning up the joint. Moving back, we've got the intake ramps, which I think should be separate. The lower belly insert, which is cut across the sparrow bays, which just drives me crazy. I mean, you could argue that it's on the underside, so nobody will see it. The section between the jet pipes at the lower rear, and again, these are all things that just over 30-35 years ago, I just looked at the Hasegawa kit and thought, yeah, they've done that right. That's bang on. That's how it should be. And finally, the vertical tail, which has got a separate insert, which, like I said previously, fine molds obviously appreciated that was an issue. later on in the toolings, because when they started the short nose Phantoms, the C's and D's and things, and the B's and J's and N's, they've actually provided that as a one-piece tail now. So they obviously appreciated that it was an issue. So yeah, I don't want to appear overly critical. I think it's a kit that is, like I say, it's clearly the best 72nd scale Phantom range on the market now. You know, it was a long time between the Hasegawa kits and these kits. Revell's late 90s, RF4E and F-4F, fairly nice models, but had some outline errors that were annoying, but were very nicely moulded. And then it was over 20 years before this range started appearing. So it's definitely worth the money, without a doubt. It's just that I'm a bit more circumspect about praising fine moulds unnecessarily. I think they do some brilliant work, and they make some, not errors, but some questionable design decisions. So that is the new Hasegawa fine moulds 72nd scale F-4F. And I suspect there will be further boxings. I suspect there'll be an ice boxing, the improved combat efficiency aircraft with, you know, which carry down rams and all that sort of thing. And I've got a couple of the F4Es en route, which actually were dispatched before these but haven't turned up yet, so I'm still waiting for them. So yeah, available straight from Japan at the moment, and obviously it'll start filtering through import channels in due course. So marks out of 10. I would give it a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Best Phantoms and 72nd on the market. Let down, in my opinion, by some questionable design choices, which can serve to hobble the modeler a little bit if you are clumsy when you're assembling it in any way whatsoever. So yeah, I hope that's of some help to some people. I would say buy it, but be prepared to put a little bit of work into getting the best from it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will catch you soon.